Wealthy CEO thought it was a normal flight, but panics when he sees his ex-wife with triplets walking out of a jet. Bradford, I'm not just an old friend, am I? The 6-year-old boy looked up at him from a nest of blankets on the couch, his face pale from being sick all morning. Those wide eyes, identical to Bradford's own, cut through every carefully constructed lie. What do you mean? You look too much like us. And Mom looks at you weird, sad and happy at the same time. Bradford Lawson, billionaire CEO, master of boardroom negotiations, couldn't find words. Because the child was right, and the truth he'd been running from for 7 years was sitting in front of him in a navy blue jacket, waiting for an answer. Are you our dad? Before we get to how Bradford answered that question, you need to understand how a man who had everything ended up with nothing that mattered. You need to know about the moment at the airport that shattered his carefully built world. And you need to see the choice he made 7 years ago that created 3 sons he never knew existed. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from, because this story is about to take you on a journey about fear, regret, and whether some mistakes are too big to ever fix. Bradford Lawson stood at the private terminal window of JFK International Airport, his phone pressed against his ear, barely registering the quarterly earnings report his CFO was reciting. His eyes tracked the private jets on the tarmac below out of habit, a reflex born from years of measuring success by the size of aircraft and the exclusivity of airport lounges. He was waiting for his own Gulfstream to be fueled for a flight to Seattle, heading to another acquisition meeting that would add another zero to his already obscene net worth. The numbers mean we're up 18% from last quarter, the CFO continued. Bradford, are you there? Yeah, I'm here. Send me the full breakdown. Then, he saw it. A Bombardier Global 7500, one of the most expensive private jets in existence, taxied smoothly across the tarmac and came to a stop near the terminal. The aircraft door opened with mechanical precision, and stairs unfolded like a red carpet leading to nowhere. A woman emerged at the top of those stairs, and Bradford's breath caught in his throat so violently he nearly dropped his phone. Paige, but not the Paige he remembered. Not the soft-spoken woman he had left standing in their tiny apartment 7 years ago, her eyes red and swollen from crying, her hands trembling as she held the divorce papers his lawyer had drawn up. This woman moved with the kind of confidence that comes from owning not just the air around her but the ground beneath her feet. Her hair, once long and carelessly styled, was cut in a sleek bob that framed her face with precision. She wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than the monthly rent on their old apartment had cost for an entire year. Bradford? The CFO's voice sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater. Bradford, are you listening? He ended the call without answering, without even looking at the screen. His eyes were locked on the tarmac. Then he saw them. 3 small boys, identical in every possible way except for the colors of their jackets, descended the stairs behind Paige. Navy blue, forest green, burgundy. They couldn't have been more than 6 years old. They moved in that synchronized chaos that only siblings can manage, talking over each other, pointing at things on the tarmac, one of them hopping down the stairs on a single foot for no apparent reason. The boy in the navy jacket turned toward the terminal window as they reached the bottom of the stairs. His face tilted upward, squinting against the afternoon sun, and Bradford felt the entire floor tilt beneath him like the ground had turned to water. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected his own childhood. The sharp angle of the jaw, still soft with baby fat but unmistakably there. The wide, set eyes. The exact way the boy's hair fell across his forehead to spite someone, clearly having made an effort to comb it into submission that morning. Whose plane is that? Bradford heard himself ask. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, distant and hollow. A terminal attendant standing nearby looked up from her tablet with a professional smile. That's the Hartley jet, sir. Belongs to Paige Hartley, the founder of Meridian Tech. Hartley, her maiden name. She had taken it back. She had erased him so completely that even her name had returned to what it was before he existed in her life. And the children? The question came out barely above a whisper. The attendant's smile widened, taking on that particular quality people get when talking about celebrities they admire. Her triplets. She brings them everywhere, actually. There was a whole article in Forbes about how she built a billion-dollar company as a single mother. Quite inspiring, really. Very impressive woman. Triplets. 7 years ago. The math assembled itself in Bradford's mind, like a prosecutor building an airtight case. He had left Paige 3 months into their marriage. She had been so happy that morning, making breakfast in their cramped kitchen, humming to herself while she scrambled eggs. He had been suffocating, feeling the walls of their modest life closing in. Around him, seeing his father's defeated face in every reflective surface. He had never asked if she was pregnant. She had never told him. Or had she tried? The memory hit him like a physical blow, sudden and devastating. 7 years ago, Bradford had stood in the bathroom of the small apartment he shared with Paige, staring at his own reflection in a mirror that had a crack running through the upper right corner. He was 28 years old, working 80-hour weeks at a tech startup that paid him barely, enough to cover rent. And he had just gotten the phone call that his mother was sick. The same sickness that had slowly drained his father's savings, stripped away his father's dignity, and ultimately killed his father's will to live. Medical bills. The words had tasted like ash in his mouth. He had looked around their tiny apartment that night after Paige fell asleep. The second-hand furniture they had bought from a couple moving to California, the water stain on the ceiling they kept meaning to ask the landlord to fix but never did, the stack of bills on the kitchen counter that never seemed to get smaller no matter how many checks they wrote. And he had felt a terror so deep and so bottomless it had no name. This was his father's life. This was the trap his father had died in, crushed under its weight. A good man, a kind man, destroyed by the simple mathematics of not enough. Not enough money, not enough options, not enough time. Bradford had made a decision that night, standing in that bathroom with the cracked mirror. He would never be his father. He would never let love and obligation and responsibility trap him in a life of barely surviving, of drowning slowly while pretending to swim. He would claw his way to the top where the air was clean and the view was clear and no one, nothing, could ever pull him back down into that suffocating darkness. So he had called a lawyer the next morning. He had papers drawn up with cold, clinical efficiency. He came home 3 days later and told Paige, sweet and trusting Paige who believed in him more than he had ever believed in himself, that he was done, that he needed to focus on his career, that he couldn't be married right now, that she was holding him back. He had watched her face crumble like a building in slow motion collapse. He had hardened his heart against it, turned it to stone, because feeling anything would have meant staying. And staying meant drowning. He had walked out while she was still crying at their kitchen table. He had told himself it was the only way, the necessary sacrifice, the price of survival. Bradford walked through the terminal in a daze now, 7 years later, his hands shaking in a way they never shook during million-dollar negotiations. He tried searching for Paige's name in the terminal database, but her flight information was restricted, marked private. Of course it was. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant. Rebecca, I need you to find me everything on Paige Hartley. Meridian Tech. Current location, schedule, everything you can get. There was a pause on the other end. Sir? Is everything all right? Just do it, Rebecca. Please. Now. Right away, sir. 20 minutes later, sitting in the back of his car with his driver waiting. Patiently in the front seat, Bradford's phone buzzed with an incoming file. He opened it with trembling fingers. Paige Hartley, founder and CEO of Meridian Tech, a cybersecurity firm that had revolutionized data protection protocols for hospitals and healthcare systems. Current company valuation, $2.3 billion, known for her aggressive privacy policies and her repeated refusal to take her company public despite numerous offers from major tech corporations. Active philanthropist with a specific focus on single-parent family support and healthcare access advocacy. Mother to triplet boys, Owen, Felix, and Theo Hartley, age 6. There was a photograph embedded in the file from a TED Talk she had given 8 months ago. Paige stood center stage under bright lights, poised and powerful, and the caption beneath read, Hartley credits her sons as her primary motivation for building a company that could change lives. I wanted them to see that your circumstances don't define your future. Your choices do. Bradford's hands clenched around his phone hard enough that the screen protector cracked slightly at the corner. Your choices do. He had spent 7 years building an empire on the foundation of running away from fear. She had spent 7 years building an empire on the foundation of staying despite it. The Forbes article Rebecca had included was worse. So much worse. It detailed Paige's journey with a kind of intimate specificity that made Bradford's chest physically ache, discovering she was pregnant exactly 1 week after her husband abandoned her. Triplets, the doctor had told her. High-risk pregnancy. She had been waitressing double shift to pay rent, coding during the few hours between those shifts, building the early prototype of what would eventually become Meridian Tech on a laptop she had bought used. One that was literally held together with duct tape and determination. She had given birth at 32 weeks, 3 tiny boys arriving too early, alone, in a hospital room because she had no family nearby and her husband was gone. Simply gone. The article didn't name Bradford. It didn't need to. It simply referred to her ex-husband, who left shortly after their marriage, during what Miss Hartley describes as the most difficult period of her life. He was a footnote in her success story, the obstacle she had overcome on her way to greatness. Bradford sat in the car for a long time after finishing the article, just staring at nothing. Then he did something he had not allowed himself to do in 7 years. He opened the locked drawer in his mind where he kept all the things he didn't let himself feel, all the memories he had buried, and he let himself remember her, really remember her. Paige laughing at his terrible jokes, the kind that made everyone else groan but always made her smile. Paige falling asleep on his shoulder during movies, her breathing soft and steady. Paige believing he could be more than he was, better than he thought, possible, seeing potential in him that he couldn't see in himself. Paige saying I do in a simple white dress in a courthouse on a Tuesday afternoon, looking at him like he was her entire world. Paige's face when he had told her he wanted a divorce, when he had placed those papers on their kitchen table. The exact way her expression had shattered. Mr. Lawson? The driver's voice cut through the memory. Shall I take you to the airport, sir? Your flight to Seattle? Bradford looked out the window. The sky was turning darker, clouds rolling in from the east. No, he said quietly. Take me to the Peninsula Hotel. Sir, I'm not getting on a plane today. Take me to the Peninsula. He wasn't leaving New York. Not yet. Not until he knew the truth. Not until he understood what he had done. Over the next 3 days, Bradford did something he had never done before in his entire professional life. He researched without a specific business goal in mind. He learned that Paige was in New York for a series of investor meetings, though according to multiple sources, she turned down the vast majority of investment offers. She kept Meridian Tech private, controlled, entirely hers. No board of directors to answer to, no shareholders to please. He learned that she lived in a restored brownstone in Brooklyn, in a neighborhood known for its tree-lined streets and excellent schools. That the Triplets attended a progressive private academy known for its arts program and individualized learning approach. That she had never remarried, never even been publicly linked to anyone romantically. Her entire life, as far as the public record showed, revolved around her sons and her company. He learned that she had built exactly the life he had been too terrified to even attempt. On the 4th day, Rebecca called him with information from her extensive network of contacts. Paige Hartley is speaking at a Women in Tech Summit tomorrow night, she said. The Javits Center. It's completely sold out, but I can get you a ticket if you want one, Mr. Lawson. Bradford stared at the wall of his hotel suite, at the expensive abstract, art that meant nothing, at the view of Central Park that felt empty. The old version of himself, the Bradford from a week ago, would have sent flowers with a carefully worded note, or had someone arrange a private meeting, or leveraged some business connection to engineer an introduction. The old Bradford would have made it about control, about what he wanted, about managing the situation. He had been that version of himself for 7 years, and all it had gotten him was a penthouse apartment that echoed with emptiness and a life that looked perfect in photographs but felt hollow at 3 a.m. Get me the ticket, he said finally. But not very important person. No special access, just a regular seat, in the back. Sir, you heard me, Rebecca. A normal ticket. Last row if possible. The Javits Center was absolutely packed the following evening. Bradford sat in the very last row, wearing jeans and a plain gray sweater, clothes he'd had to actually go out and buy because he didn't own anything anymore that wasn't custom tailored. He felt anonymous in a way he hadn't experienced in years, invisible in the crowd. It was deeply uncomfortable. It was also, strangely, a relief. The panel started exactly on time. There were 4 women on stage, all tech founders, all brilliant in their respective fields. Paige sat third from the left. She spoke about building a company with a moral backbone, about refusing to compromise on user privacy even when investors promised billions in funding, about the responsibility tech companies had to protect the vulnerable rather than exploit them. Her voice was strong and clear and carried total authority, nothing like the soft-spoken woman he had known. Then the moderator asked the question that changed everything. Paige, you're quite well known for your advocacy around work-life balance and integration, which is honestly rare in Silicon Valley culture. How do you manage being a single mother to triplets while simultaneously running a billion-dollar company? Paige smiled, and for just a moment Bradford saw a flash of the woman he had married. Warm, genuine, real. I don't actually believe in balance, she said. I believe in integration. My sons know what I do. They come to the office with me sometimes. They see me work. They also see me stop working to have dinner with them every single night. No matter what deal is on the table or what meeting is scheduled, I want them to understand that success isn't about choosing between work and family. It's about building a life where both things matter, where both things have space. Was that always your philosophy? The moderator asked. Paige's smile faded into something more serious, more thoughtful. No, she said quietly. I learned it the hard way. When I found out I was pregnant, I was completely alone and absolutely terrified. I had just been left by someone I loved deeply. I had no money and no real prospects. I had to make a choice in that moment. Let fear win, let it crush me, or build something different. Build something better. I chose to build, and every single day since then, I've tried to choose building over fear. The audience applauded, the sound washing over Bradford like a wave. He sat frozen in his seat, his throat tight, unable to move or breathe properly. After the panel ended, there was a networking reception in the adjacent hall. Bradford stood against the far wall, partially hidden behind a column, watching Paige move through the crowd. People wanted her attention, her business card, her time, her wisdom. She gave it generously but with clear, firm boundaries. He watched her check her phone at one point, smile at whatever message she saw, then type a quick response. Probably texting with a nanny or babysitter, he thought. Checking on the boys. He shouldn't approach her. He had absolutely no right to disrupt her life now, 7 years after. Destroying it. Just because his guilt had finally caught up with him. Just because seeing those 3 boys had shattered every wall he'd built. He was turning toward the exit, ready to leave, when he heard a voice behind him. Bradford. He turned, slowly. Paige stood roughly 5 feet away, her eyes wide with unmistakable shock. She was holding a glass of wine in one hand, and he could see her grip tighten around the stem. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of the reception, hundreds of conversations happening simultaneously, faded into meaningless white noise. Paige, he said. His voice cracked on her name like he was 16 years old. She recovered quickly, her face smoothing into a polite but distant mask, the same expression she probably used with pushy investors. I didn't expect to see you here. I didn't expect to come. I saw you at JFK 4 days ago. You and your sons. Something flickered in her eyes, too fast for him to identify. You saw the boys. Yes. She looked at him for a long moment, and he could practically see her making calculations, weighing options and outcomes, deciding how to handle this unexpected situation. Finally, she glanced around the crowded reception hall. This isn't the place for this conversation, she said quietly. There's a coffee shop across the street. Meet me there in 20 minutes. She walked away before he could respond, disappearing into the crowd with practiced ease. 20 minutes later, Bradford sat in a corner booth of a nearly empty coffee shop, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee he hadn't touched and probably wouldn't drink. When Paige walked through the door, she had changed from her heels into a pair of flats she'd apparently been carrying in her bag. It was such a simple human detail that it nearly broke something in his chest. She slid into the booth across from him without ceremony. Say what you came to say, Bradford. He had rehearsed this. He had spent the last 4 days planning exactly what he would say if he ever got the chance. But sitting across from her now, separated by 3 feet of table and 7 years of damage, all the carefully chosen words evaporated like steam. Are they mine? The question came out raw and unpolished. Paige's expression didn't change. Biologically, yes. The confirmation hit him with the force of a freight train. Why didn't you tell me? Paige's laugh was sharp and bitter, a sound with edges. Tell you, Bradford, you served me divorce papers 3 months into our marriage. You made it abundantly clear that you didn't want to be tied down to anything or anyone. What exactly was I supposed to do? Call you up and say, hey, I know you just fled our marriage like it was a burning building, but surprise, you're going to be a father to 3 children? How do you think that conversation would have gone? I would have. You would have what? Her voice was sharp now, cutting through his attempt at justification. Stayed out of obligation? Resented me and them for trapping you? Sent child support checks to ease your conscience while you built your empire somewhere far away? He flinched because she was absolutely right. That was exactly what he would have done. I didn't tell you, Paige continued, her voice shaking slightly now with suppressed emotion, because I didn't want my sons to grow up feeling like a burden. I didn't want them to spend their childhood seeing you look at them the way you looked at me that day you left, like we were an anchor dragging you down into dark water. That's not... Don't. She held up one hand. Don't you dare rewrite history right now. You left because you were afraid of being poor, afraid of being trapped, afraid of becoming your father. You told me all of it that last night, remember? You explained in great detail how you couldn't end up like him, crushed, under the weight of a family he couldn't adequately support. Bradford closed his eyes. He had said exactly that. He had said it to justify his choice, to make her understand why he had to leave. Instead, he had just been unspeakably cruel. You're right, he said quietly. I was afraid. I was drowning in fear. My mom had just been diagnosed with the same cancer that killed my dad, and I saw my entire future laid out in front of me. Working myself to death to pay medical bills and regular bills, never getting ahead. Always sinking, watching the people I loved suffer because I wasn't enough. So I ran. I chose to save myself instead of trusting that maybe we could save each other. Paige's expression softened fractionally, but her guard remained firmly in place. And now? Why are you here now, Bradford? After 7 years of complete silence, I saw them. I saw your sons, our sons, and I saw my own face looking back at me 3 times over. I saw you, successful and strong in everything I was too scared to believe we could become. And I realized that I've spent 7 years building a fortress to protect myself from the very thing that would have actually made me whole. That's a lovely speech, Paige said, her voice tired. But you don't get to walk back into our lives just because you had an epiphany at an airport. Owen, Felix, and Theo are 6 years old. They have a life. A stable, good life. They don't know you exist. I know. Do you? She leaned forward slightly. Do you have any idea what it was actually like? Being pregnant with triplets, completely alone, waitressing until I was 8 months along because I desperately needed the money? Giving birth 5 weeks early because my body couldn't handle carrying them any longer, and then waking up in a hospital room with absolutely no one there? Bringing 3 tiny premature babies home to a studio apartment, and not sleeping for more than 45 consecutive minutes for 2 solid years? Bradford felt tears burning in his eyes, threatening to fall. No, I can't even imagine it. But I know you did it. I read about it. You built something absolutely incredible out of the worst thing I ever did to you. I didn't build it out of spite, Bradford. I built it out of necessity, and then I built it out of love. Her voice cracked slightly. I looked at my 3 boys, these 3 tiny humans who depended entirely on me, and I decided they deserved a mother who showed them that life could be better, that they could make it better. I didn't do it to prove anything to you. I did it because someone had to, and you weren't there. They sat in silence for a long moment. The coffee shop's overhead music played softly, something instrumental and melancholy that fit the moment too perfectly. I don't want to disrupt their lives, Bradford said finally. I have no right to ask for anything from you or from them. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so deeply, profoundly sorry for what I did to you and for what I never gave them. And if there's ever anything I can do, not money, not things, but anything real, I want to try. Paige studied his face for a long time, her expression unreadable. He let her look, didn't try to hide the regret or the pain or the 7 years of loneliness he had earned through his own choices. I need to think about this, she said finally. This isn't a decision I can make impulsively or alone. It affects them. Everything I do affects them. Of course, give me your number. I'll contact you if and when I decide there's a path forward. Don't look for us. Don't show up places hoping to run into us. Don't send gifts or letters or anything else. If I decide to open this door even slightly, it will be entirely on my terms, at my pace, with my rules. Understood? Completely understood. She took his number, saved it in her phone without any visible reaction, and stood to leave. At the coffee shop door, she paused and looked back at him. For what it's worth, Bradford, I didn't hate you. Even after everything, even during the hardest moments, I didn't hate you. I just moved on. I built a life where you were a chapter, not the whole story. Then she was gone, the door closing behind her with a soft chime. For 3 weeks, Bradford heard absolutely nothing. Radio silence. He didn't reach out, didn't break the boundary she had set, even though every instinct screamed at him to do something, anything. Instead, he went to therapy for the first time in his entire life and talked about his father, his fear, his choice to run. He started making changes at his company, instituting comprehensive parental leave policies, funding on-site childcare for all employees, sitting in on meetings about work-life integration that he would have dismissed as wasteful just a month ago. He didn't do it for redemption. He did it because it was right, and because he was exhausted from being the man who only ever did things for himself. On the 22nd day, his phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? It's Paige. There was a pause, and he could hear her breathing. The boys have been asking questions about their father. They're at an age where they're noticing that other kids have dads, and they don't. I've always told them that their father wasn't able to be part of their lives, that it was complicated, and that they were loved and wanted by me. But they're asking more specific questions now. Bradford's heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Okay. I talked to a child psychologist, Dr. Miriam Chen. She specializes in family dynamics and reintegration. She said that if you're serious, truly serious about being consistent and present, there could potentially be a path forward. But it's slow. It's supervised. It's entirely on their timeline, not yours. And the absolute moment you hurt them or disappear, I will cut you off completely and permanently. Do you understand what I'm saying? I understand. We're in New York for another week. There's a park near our hotel, Prospect Park. Tomorrow, at 10 in the morning. I'll bring them. You'll be there. We'll tell them you're an old friend of mine who wants to meet them. Nothing more than that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Can you do that? Can you just be present without pushing for more? Yes. Absolutely yes. Bradford. Yes? Don't make me regret this. Please. The line went dead. Bradford arrived at Prospect Park at 9:30 the next morning, a full 30 minutes early. He sat on a designated bench near the playground, his hands sweating despite the cool autumn air. At exactly 10 o'clock, he saw them approaching across the grass. Paige walked with 3 small boys in tow, and they were clearly in the middle of some kind of argument. Their high voices carried across the open space something about whose turn it was to choose the game. Paige was mediating with the practiced, patient tone of someone who had refereed approximately 10,000 similar disputes. They were beautiful. They were real. They were his. As they got closer, the boy in the navy jacket, Owen according to his research, looked up and spotted Bradford on the bench. He stopped walking abruptly. Mom, who's that? Paige knelt down smoothly to their level, bringing herself eye to eye with all 3 boys. Remember how I told you yesterday that I had an old friend I wanted you to meet? That's him. His name is Bradford. 3 pairs of eyes, identical to Bradford's own, turned to study him with the unfiltered curiosity of children. Felix, wearing the green jacket, spoke first. Why does he look like us? Paige didn't miss a beat, her answer smooth and prepared. Some people just look alike. It's one of those funny coincidences that happens sometimes. Theo, the smallest of the 3 in his burgundy jacket, tilted his head to one side in consideration. Are you nice? The question was so direct, so earnestly childish, that Bradford felt his throat close up completely. I'm trying to be, he managed to say honestly. That's a weird answer, Owen observed, but there was a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Bradford smiled back, feeling the expression probably looked as shaky as it felt. It's a weird question. For the next hour, Bradford sat on that park bench and simply existed in the orbit of 3 6-year-old boys. They didn't talk to him much, too absorbed in the far more interesting world of the playground. But Owen brought him a cool rock he found near the swings, presenting it like a treasure. It's quartz, I think, Owen said seriously. Pretty cool, right? It's very cool, Bradford agreed, turning the rock over in his hands like it was made of gold. Felix called out from the top of the slide, "Hey, watch me," and Bradford watched, and gave an enthusiastic thumbs up when Felix successfully made it down. Theo, after exhausting himself on the climbing structure, came and sat next to Bradford, on the bench for approximately 5 minutes, eating animal crackers from a small bag. Do you like dinosaurs? Theo asked between bites. I do, Bradford said carefully. What's your favorite? I don't know enough about them to have a favorite. What's yours? Ankylosaurus, because it has armor plates and a club tail and nobody messes with it. It's basically a tank dinosaur. That's a really good reason to like it. Paige watched from a careful distance the entire time, her expression neutral, but her body language alert. When the hour was complete, she called the boys over with practiced authority. Time to go, guys. Say goodbye to Bradford. Bye, they chorused in rough unison, already moving toward the park exit. Their limited attention spans thoroughly exhausted by the morning's activities. Paige stayed behind for a brief moment. You did well, she said quietly. You didn't try too hard. That was good. I didn't know what to do, Bradford admitted. So I just tried to be there. That's all they needed today. She paused, seeming to consider her next words. We're going back to Brooklyn tomorrow. I'll think about next steps. Don't expect anything to move fast. I won't. I'll follow your lead completely. She nodded once and turned to follow her sons. Paige, she looked back. Thank you for this chance, for them, for everything you've done and continue to do. Her expression softened almost imperceptibly. I didn't do it for you, Bradford. I did it for them. Don't ever forget that. Then she was gone, herding 3 energetic boys toward the parking area, and Bradford sat alone on the bench holding a piece of quartz and feeling like his entire world had just shifted on its axis. Months passed in a new rhythm Bradford had never experienced before. He flew to New York twice a month, every 2 weeks like clockwork, never missing a scheduled visit. Each meeting followed a similar pattern. A park, a museum, once a children's theater show where he sat 2 rows behind them and watched Theo fall asleep against Paige's shoulder during the second act. The boys started to recognize him, to anticipate his presence. Is Bradford coming? Became a question they regularly asked Paige before each weekend. He didn't push. He didn't ask for more time or different arrangements. He showed up, stayed present, and left when it was time to leave. 4 months into this careful routine, everything changed on a rainy Saturday in November. Bradford had flown in from San Francisco for his usual scheduled visit, but Paige texted him early that morning. Boys all have a stomach bug. Pretty ugly. Need to reschedule. Sorry. He should have simply said yes, of course. Hope they feel better soon. The old Bradford would have. Instead, he found himself typing, "Can I help?" 3 dots appeared on his screen, then disappeared, then appeared again. This pattern repeated several times. Finally, her response came through. Are you serious? Yes, completely serious. 20 minutes later, Bradford stood in the doorway of Paige's brownstone, holding multiple bags from a pharmacy. Saltine crackers, ginger ale, children's electrolyte drinks in various flavors, anti-nausea medication. He'd panic bought half an aisle. Paige answered the door, looking thoroughly exhausted. Her hair was piled in a messy bun, and she wore old sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt with a stain on the shoulder. You really didn't have to come, she said, but she stepped aside to let him enter. I wanted to help. She let him into the house properly for the first time. It was beautiful inside, warm and clearly lived in. Art covered the walls, photographs of the boys everywhere, their drawings held to the refrigerator with magnets. The sound of retching came from somewhere upstairs. That's Felix, Paige said wearily. Owen's in the downstairs bathroom. Theo seems to be over the worst of it, but he's extremely clingy and won't let me more than 5 feet away. So that's where we are. Tell me what to do. For the next 6 hours, Bradford did things he had never done in his entire life. He held a bucket while Owen was sick, rubbing the boy's back and murmuring that it was okay, that it would pass. He sat with Theo and watched cartoons while the boy dozed fitfully. Against his side, his small body radiating heat from a low fever. He helped Paige strip beds and start endless loads of laundry and distribute crackers in tiny, careful portions to see what would stay down. It was messy and unglamorous, and nothing remotely like any vision of fatherhood he had ever held or run from. It was also the most real, most honest thing he had ever done. At one point, while Paige was upstairs helping Felix, Owen looked up at Bradford from his nest of blankets on the living room couch. His face was still pale, his hair stuck to his forehead with sweat. You're not just an old friend, are you? Bradford's heart stopped completely. What do you mean? You look way too much like us. And Mom looks at you the way she looks at our baby pictures sometimes. Sad and happy at the same time. Like something hurts, but she's glad about it anyway. This boy was 6 years old, and impossibly, devastatingly perceptive. "You're right," Bradford said carefully, knowing this moment mattered. "I'm not just an old friend. Are you our dad?" The word dad felt simultaneously too big and too small, too weighty and too simple. He hadn't earned it. But the truth was the truth. "Biologically, yes," Bradford said slowly. "But being a dad is more than biology. It's being there and showing up and taking care of people when they need you. I wasn't those things before. I wasn't there when I should have been. I'm trying very hard to learn how to be those things now." Owen considered this with the seriousness of someone much older. "Mom says everyone makes mistakes. She says what really matters is whether you fix them or just keep making them. Your mom is very smart. Are you fixing your mistake?" Bradford looked at this small, serious boy wrapped in blankets on a couch, his son, and felt the full weight of the question settle on him. "I'm trying," he said honestly. "It might take a very long time. It might take forever, actually." Owen nodded solemnly, seeming to find this answer acceptable. "That's okay. Good things take a long time. Mom says she built her whole company brick by brick, and that took forever too." Later that evening, after all three boys were finally, mercifully asleep, and the house had settled into exhausted quiet, Bradford and Paige sat in her kitchen drinking tea. Real mugs of actual tea, not the expensive stuff from Bradford's hotel, just normal tea in a normal kitchen. "Owen knows," Bradford said quietly. Paige sighed, but didn't look surprised. "I figured they'd start putting it together eventually. They're too observant for their own good sometimes. He asked me directly if I was their dad." "What did you tell him?" "That biologically I am, but that being a dad means more than that. That it means showing up and being there. And that I'm trying to learn how to do that." Paige was quiet for a long moment, staring down into her mug like it held answers. "They're going to want more now, Bradford. If we really do this, if we continue down this path, they're going to want an actual father, not just a friendly visitor every 2 weeks." "I know. Can you actually do that? Can you stay when it gets hard? When they're being difficult? When it's boring and thankless and nothing like the highlight reel you're seeing now?" Bradford thought about his father, crushed under the weight of a life he couldn't carry. He thought about the fear that had driven him away 7 years ago, the terror of becoming that defeated man. He thought about 7 years of empty penthouses and meaningless acquisitions, and relationships that never went deeper than surface level. Then he thought about Owen asking if he was fixing his mistake. He thought about Felix yelling, "Watch me," from the top of a slide. He thought about Theo explaining dinosaurs with complete seriousness. "I don't know if I can," Bradford said with complete honesty. "I've never done it before. I'm probably going to mess it up 100 different ways, but I want to try. Not to fix my guilt or earn forgiveness or prove something, but because they deserve someone who tries. They deserve someone who stays." Paige looked at him for a very long time, and he could see her weighing 7 years of evidence of who he had been against 6 months of evidence of who he might be becoming. "Okay," she said finally, quietly, "but we do this my way, slowly and carefully, with rules and boundaries, with therapy for you, for them, for all of us if needed. And the absolute second it starts to hurt them, we stop completely. Agreed. Whatever you think is best. And Bradford? Yes, this doesn't fix us. You and me. That marriage ended 7 years ago, and it's staying ended. This is about you and them, not us." He nodded, ignoring the small ache in his chest that he had no right to feel. "I understand completely. This is about them. Only about them." "Good." They sat in silence for a while longer, drinking tea in a kitchen that smelled faintly of ginger ale and children's soap and something Bradford was starting to recognize as home, and he felt something he hadn't felt in 7 years. He felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. 18 months after that first meeting in Prospect Park, Bradford sat on the grass, watching clouds with Theo, while Owen read quietly on. A nearby bench and Felix climbed a tree that was absolutely too tall, but that Bradford had learned to tolerate with only moderate anxiety. "Dad," Theo said, using the word that had taken months to earn and still made Bradford's chest tight every single time he heard it. "That cloud looks exactly like a stegosaurus. See the plates on its back?" "Where?" Bradford asked, lying back on the grass next to him. "Right there." Theo pointed with complete confidence at a cloud that looked, to Bradford's eyes, like absolutely nothing in particular. "I see it," Bradford lied, and Theo beamed. "Can I go higher?" Felix called from his position in the tree. No, Bradford and Owen said simultaneously, in perfect unison. Owen looked over at Bradford and grinned. You're getting way better at the dad thing. Am the first? Yeah. You hardly panic anymore when Felix does something dangerous. I still panic, Bradford admitted. I've just gotten better at hiding it. Owen laughed and returned to his book. Bradford's phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from Paige. How's it going? He took a quick photo of the scene. Owen absorbed in reading, Felix visible in his tree, Theo pointing at clouds. He sent it without commentary. 3 dots appeared immediately, then her response. They're lucky to have you. Bradford stared at the message for a long moment, feeling the weight of those words, the forgiveness implicit in them. Then he typed back, I'm the lucky one. And for the first time in his entire life, Bradford Lawson genuinely believed it. He had spent 7 years running from the fear of not being enough. It turned out that showing up, brick by brick, day by day, mistake by mistake, was the only way to actually become enough. If you're feeling this story, hit that like button right now. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever had to rebuild trust after breaking it? Have you ever gotten a second chance you didn't deserve? Because Bradford's journey is far from over, and what happens next will show you what real redemption actually looks like. 6 months after that moment in the park, Bradford sat in Dr. Raymond Keller's office for what had become a weekly ritual. The therapy sessions had started as a condition, something Paige had insisted on, but they had become something Bradford actually looked forward to, a space where he could be honest about the fear that still lived in his chest. Tell me about this week, Dr. Keller said, settling into his chair with his ever-present notepad. I took all 3 boys to a science museum on Saturday, Bradford said. Paige had a business thing, a keynote in Boston, so I had them for the whole weekend. First time completely alone with all 3 of them overnight. How did that feel? Terrifying. Bradford laughed, but it was a real laugh, not a deflection. Felix wanted to touch everything despite all the do not touch signs. Theo had a meltdown because the planetarium show was too loud. Owen got separated from us for about 90 seconds in the dinosaur exhibit, and I aged approximately 10 years. But you managed it. We managed it. I apologized to 3 different museum staff members. We left the planetarium show early. We found Owen, who was completely fine and didn't understand why I looked like I'd seen a ghost. And then we got pizza, and they told me it was the best day ever, which I'm pretty sure was just the pizza talking, but still. Dr. Keller smiled slightly. You're describing parenthood, Bradford. The messy, imperfect, everyday version. How does that compare to what you were afraid of 7 years ago? Bradford was quiet for a moment, really considering the question. 7 years ago, I thought being a father meant being crushed under responsibility I couldn't handle. I thought it meant watching myself fail and having 3 people suffer because of my failure, like my dad. And now I think I had it backwards. My dad wasn't crushed by the responsibility. He was crushed by circumstances, by a system that didn't support him, by illness and bad luck and timing. But he showed up anyway. Every single day of his life, he showed up. Bradford felt his voice getting thick. I spent my whole life thinking he was weak for staying. Turns out he was the strongest person I've ever known, and I was too scared to see it. Have you told him that? He's been dead for 14 years. Dr. Keller leaned forward slightly. Have you told him anyway? Bradford shook his head. That's your assignment this week. Go to where he's buried. Tell him what you just told me. You'd be surprised how much the living need to say things to the dead. That night, Bradford took a train out to the cemetery in New Jersey where his father was buried. He hadn't been there since the funeral, hadn't been able to face it. The headstone was simple, just his father's name and dates, nothing fancy. Bradford stood there for a long time, hands in his pockets, feeling ridiculous and heartbroken all at once. Hey, Dad, he said finally, his voice sounding too loud in the quiet cemetery. I'm sorry it took me 14 years to come back here. I'm sorry for a lot of things, actually. The wind moved through the trees, the only response. I spent my whole life thinking you were a cautionary tale, a warning about what happens when you let life trap you. But I had it completely wrong. Bradford's voice cracked. You weren't trapped. You made a choice. Every single day you chose us, Mom and me. You chose to stay, even when staying was hard. Even when it hurt. Even when you were tired and scared and probably wanted to run. He wiped at his eyes with the back of his hand. I ran, Dad. When I got the chance, when I saw what I thought was your life coming for me, I ran as fast as I could. And I abandoned someone who loved me. I abandoned 3 kids who needed me. Because I was a coward. The words hung in the air. But I'm trying to fix it now. I'm trying to be even half the father you were. I've got 3 boys, Dad. Triplets. Owen, Felix, and Theo. They're 6.5 years old, and they're incredible, and they're terrifying, and I love them so much it physically hurts sometimes. And I think you would have loved them too. Bradford sat down on the grass in front of the headstone, not caring that it was damp. I wish you could have met them. I wish I could call you and ask you how you did it, how you showed up every single day even when you were exhausted. I wish I had told you that I saw you, that I saw how hard you tried. I wish I had said thank you instead of just running away from your memory. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the cemetery. I'm going to keep trying, Dad. I'm going to keep showing up, and maybe one day I'll be half as good at this as you were. Bradford stayed until it was almost dark, just sitting there, and when he finally left, something felt lighter, like he'd been carrying a weight he didn't even know was there, and he'd finally set it down. The following Saturday, Bradford had the boys at his brownstone for the weekend. His home had transformed over the past year from a showpiece he barely lived in to an actual home that showed evidence of life. Drawings covered his refrigerator. 3 pairs of small shoes lived permanently by the door. The second bedroom had been converted into a room for the boys with 3 beds and far too many dinosaur posters, mostly courtesy of Theo's obsession. "Okay, gentlemen," Bradford said, standing in his kitchen with 3 expectant faces looking up at him. "What do we want for breakfast?" "Pancakes," Theo said immediately. "With chocolate chips," Felix added. "And blueberries," Owen contributed. "Can you do both?" "I can attempt both. No promises on quality." "Mom puts the chocolate chips in a smiley face," Theo informed him seriously. "Of course she does," Bradford muttered, getting out the mixing bowl. "Because your mom is an overachiever who makes the rest of us look bad." "What's an overachiever?" Felix asked. "Someone who's really good at everything," Owen explained with the confidence of a 7-year-old who'd clearly heard the term before. Bradford made the pancakes, and they were lopsided and slightly burnt on one side, and he absolutely could not make the chocolate chips form anything resembling a smiley face. The boys declared them perfect anyway and drowned them in syrup. After breakfast, which took twice as long to clean up as it had to eat, Owen approached Bradford with a serious expression. "Dad, can we talk about something?" Bradford's heart did a small flip. Serious conversations with Owen usually meant something big was coming. "Of course. What's up? Why didn't you and Mom stay married?" There it was. The question Bradford had been preparing for, and simultaneously dreading. Felix and Theo had stopped their game of cards and were listening now, even though they pretended not to be. Bradford sat down at the kitchen table so he was at eye level with Owen. "That's a big question, and you deserve an honest answer. Can we all sit down?" All 3 boys climbed into chairs around the table, giving Bradford their full attention, in that intense way children do when they know something important is happening. "Your mom and I got married when we were younger," Bradford started carefully. "We loved each other, but I was really scared about a lot of things. I was scared about money, and scared about responsibility, and scared about becoming a dad. And instead of talking about those fears or working through them, I made a really bad choice. I left." "Why were you scared of being a dad?" Theo asked, genuinely confused. "My dad, your grandfather, who you never got to meet, died when I was young," Bradford explained. "And before he died, I watched him struggle a lot. He worked really hard, but we never had quite enough money, especially when he got sick. And I was so afraid of that happening to me that I ran away from anything that felt like it might lead to that struggle. But you're rich now," Felix pointed out with a child's blunt logic. "You have lots of money." "I do," Bradford agreed. "But I learned something important. Having money doesn't make you brave. It doesn't make you a good person. It doesn't make you happy. I had all the money in the world, and I was completely alone because I'd pushed away everyone who mattered." "Did you love us when we were born?" Owen asked quietly. "I didn't know you existed when you were born," Bradford said honestly. "Mom tried to tell me she was pregnant, but I didn't let her. I was already gone. And that was my mistake, my loss. I missed the first 6 years of your lives because I was too scared and too selfish to stay." "Do you wish you had stayed?" Theo asked. "Every single day," Bradford said, and his voice cracked slightly. "Every single day, I wish I had been brave enough to stay. I missed so much. I missed watching you be born. I missed first steps and first words and first everything. and I can never get that time back, no matter how much I wish I could. The boys were quiet, processing this. But you're here now, Owen said finally. Mom says that what matters isn't where you start, it's whether you keep trying. Your mom is right, Bradford said. As usual, I can't fix the past. I can't undo my mistakes, but I can show up now. I can try to be the dad you deserve, even though I'm learning as I go and I mess up a lot. You mess up less than you used to, Felix offered generously. Last month you forgot to pack my lunch for the field trip. This month, you haven't forgotten anything. Setting the bar high there, buddy, Bradford said with a laugh. Dad, Theo asked, do you love us now? The question was so direct, so vulnerable, that Bradford felt tears threatening. More than anything in the world, he said. You three are the best thing that ever happened to me, even though I almost missed it. Especially because I almost missed it. You taught me what actually matters. Owen seemed satisfied with this answer. Okay, can we go to the park now? Just like that, the heavy conversation was over, and they were back to being 7-year-olds who wanted to go play. Bradford marveled at their resilience, their capacity to hold space for hard truths, and then move forward. Yeah, he said, clearing his throat. Yeah, we can go to the park. At the park, Bradford pushed Theo on the swings while Owen read on a bench, and Felix attempted increasingly dangerous feats on the monkey bars. Another father was there with his daughter, and he struck up a conversation while the kids played. How many are yours? The man asked. The 3 boys, Bradford said, and saying it still felt surreal and wonderful. The ones currently trying to give me a heart attack. Triplets? Yeah, man, I can barely handle one. The guy laughed. How do you do it? Honestly, Bradford watched Felix hang upside down from the bars. I'm figuring it out as I go. I wasn't around for the first 6 years, so I'm playing catch-up. The man looked surprised. Oh wow, that must be tough. It's the best decision I ever made, Bradford said simply. Coming back. Trying, even though I mess it up constantly. That evening, after the boys were in bed following the extended negotiation process that bedtime, always seemed to require, Bradford sat in his living room with a glass of water and his phone. He scrolled through photos from the day. Felix covered in mud from the park. Theo's gap-toothed grin. Owen reading with intense concentration. He sent a few of the photos to Paige. Her response came quickly. They look happy. Bradford typed back. I think they are. I hope they are. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. You're doing a good job, Bradford. I know I don't say it often, but you are. He stared at the message for a long time. Coming from Paige, who had every reason to hate him, who had raised these 3 boys alone while he was building empires, those words meant everything. Thank you, he typed back, for giving me this chance, for being an incredible mother, for everything. Her response was just a simple heart emoji, but it felt like forgiveness, or at least the beginning of it. 3 months later, Owen came home from school with a flyer about the winter concert. The music teacher had started a beginning orchestra program, and all 3 boys had begged to join. Owen had chosen violin. Felix had chosen drums because, as he explained, you got to hit things. Theo had chosen triangle because it looked like it belonged to dinosaurs, a logic that made sense only to Theo. The concert is in 2 weeks, Owen told Bradford during their weekly video call. Are you going to come? Bradford checked his calendar. He had a board meeting scheduled that day in Singapore, a meeting that had been on the books for 3 months, a meeting about a potential merger worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I'll be there, he said without hesitation. Front row. You have to sit with Mom, Felix chimed in from off-screen. All the parents sit together. Then I'll sit with Mom, Bradford agreed. After the call ended, Bradford dialed his assistant. Rebecca, I need you to move the Singapore meeting. There was a pause. Sir, that meeting has been scheduled for months. The entire board will be there. This is the merger with... I know what it is, Bradford said gently, and I need you to move it. My sons have a school concert, and I told them I'd be there. Another pause, longer this time. Of course, Mr. Lawson. I'll coordinate with Singapore and find a new date. Thank you, Rebecca. Sir, can I say something? Of course. 2 years ago, you wouldn't have moved that meeting. You would have sent an expensive gift and a card. This is better. Whatever you're doing, whatever's changed, it's better. Bradford felt his throat get tight. Thanks, Rebecca. That means a lot. The night of the concert, Bradford arrived at the school auditorium 30 minutes early. The space was already filling with parents armed with phones and cameras, claiming the best seats. Bradford found a spot in the third row and saved the seat next to him with his coat. Paige arrived 15 minutes later, scanning the crowd. Bradford raised his hand slightly, and she spotted him, making her way down the aisle. She looked surprised to see him so early. "You're actually here," she said, sitting down beside him. "I said I would be. I know. It's just that saying and doing are different things. I've learned not to count on things until they actually happen." The subtle reminder of his past failures landed softly but definitely. "I'm trying to be someone whose word means something." Paige looked at him for a moment, her expression complex and unreadable. "I know you are." They sat in slightly awkward silence for a few minutes, surrounded by the chaos of parents and younger siblings and the general pre-concert energy. "How's work?" Bradford asked, attempting normal conversation. "Busy. We're rolling out a new security protocol for pediatric hospitals. It's complex but important." She paused. "How's your work?" "Different. I stepped back from the CEO position 6 months ago. I'm chairman of the board now, but I'm not running daily operations anymore." Paige looked genuinely surprised. "You stepped back? You? Turns out I don't actually want to work 80 hours a week anymore. I want to be at school concerts and park days and dinner tables. So I promoted someone who wanted the CEO role more than I did. Someone who's honestly better at it than I was, and I took a step back. That's a big change." "Everything's a big change," Bradford said quietly. "I'm trying to build a completely different life than the one I had, one that actually means something beyond a bank account." Before Paige could respond, the lights dimmed and the concert began. The beginning orchestra was exactly as chaotic as one would expect from a group of 7 and 8-year-olds playing instruments they'd been learning for 3 months. The rhythm was approximate at best. Several children were clearly playing entirely different songs from their peers. Felix hit his drum with unbridled enthusiasm at moments that were definitely not marked in the music. It was objectively terrible. Bradford had never heard anything more beautiful in his entire life. He spotted Owen in the violin section, his face scrunched in concentration, his bow moving across the strings with determined effort. Theo stood with the percussion section, waiting patiently for his triangle moments, and then striking it with the precision of someone who took his job very seriously. And Felix, blessed Felix, was having the absolute time of his life on drums, grinning from ear to ear. Bradford felt tears streaming down his face before he even realized he was crying. He tried to wipe them away discreetly, but Paige noticed. "You okay?" she whispered. "I'm here," he whispered back. "I'm actually here watching my sons in a school concert. I almost missed this. I almost missed all of it." Paige's expression softened in the dim light. "But you didn't miss it. You're here now." The concert lasted 45 minutes and felt both eternal and far too short. When it ended, the auditorium erupted in enthusiastic applause from parents who understood that effort mattered more than execution. Afterward, in the lobby, all 3 boys came running up to where Bradford and Paige stood together. They were still holding their instruments, their faces flushed with excitement and pride. "Did you see me?" Felix asked, not waiting for an answer. "I didn't miss a single beat. Well, maybe a few beats, but mostly I got them all." "You were amazing," Bradford said, and meant it completely. "Did I do okay on the hard part?" Owen asked, suddenly uncertain. "You did more than okay," Paige assured him. "You were wonderful. I only had 4 triangle parts, but I got them all exactly right," Theo reported seriously. "It's harder than it looks because you have to count and wait." "You were the best triangle player I've ever seen," Bradford told him. A parent nearby had a camera and offered to take a photo. "Just a quick family photo?" Before Bradford could say anything, Paige nodded. "Sure, that would be nice." They arranged themselves with Paige and Bradford in the back and the 3 boys in front, still holding their instruments. Bradford put his hand lightly on Owen's shoulder. Paige smiled genuinely, not the polite smile she used in professional photos, but a real one. The flash went off. "Could you send me that?" Bradford asked the parent, giving his email. "Of course. Beautiful family." After the parent walked away, Bradford looked at Paige. She was already looking at him. "Was that okay?" she asked quietly. "The family photo? It was more than okay. Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Do you think they're okay? Really okay?" With all of this, with me being part of their lives now in this weird, complicated way, Paige considered the question seriously, watching the boys who were now showing their instruments to another family. They're more than okay, Bradford. They're thriving. They have a father who shows up, who keeps his promises, who's learning to put them first. That's more than a lot of kids have. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to realize I'm not good enough at this. None of us are good enough at this, Paige said with a slight smile. That's parenthood. You just keep trying and hoping you're not messing them up too badly. You're good at it, Bradford said. You've always been good at it. I had to be, Paige said simply. There was no backup plan. No one else to tag in when I was exhausted or didn't know what to do. So I just kept going. I should have been there. Yes, you should have. But you weren't, and we survived. We more than survived. And now you are here, and that matters too. We don't have to keep relitigating the past, Bradford. It happened. We're building something different now. Are we? Building something? Paige looked at him directly. We're building a CEO parenting relationship. We're building trust. We're building a stable environment for 3 boys who deserve both their parents in whatever form that can take. That's what we're building. Right, of course. Bradford felt foolish for the small part of him that had wondered if maybe, possibly, eventually, there could be something more. But Paige was right. This wasn't about them. It had never been about them. The boys ran back over, interrupting the moment. Can we get ice cream? Felix asked. To celebrate? Paige looked at her watch. It's a school night. Please, Mom, Owen said. We did so good. You did do very good, Paige conceded. Okay, ice cream, but small portions, and then straight home for showers and bed. The 5 of them walked 3 blocks to a local ice cream shop, the boys chattering non-stop about the concert, about who messed up the worst, about how the 5th grade orchestra was so much better but they'd get there eventually. Bradford walked slightly behind, watching Paige navigate the chaos of 3 energetic boys with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. At the ice cream shop, Bradford paid while Paige helped the boys choose flavors, a process that took approximately 10 times longer than it should have because Theo couldn't decide between chocolate and mint chip, and Felix wanted to know if he could have a scoop of both, and Owen was reading the ingredient list for some reason. Finally, they all sat at a table with their ice cream. The boys were in their own world, comparing flavors and stealing bites from each other's cups. Bradford and Paige sat at the end of the table, united in their role as supervisors of chaos. Thank you for being flexible about tonight, Bradford said quietly. I know I'm crashing what probably would have been easier as just you and them. You're their father, Paige said. You should be at things like this. And honestly, it's nice to have another adult to share the moment with. I've been doing this alone for a long time. Do you ever regret it? Doing it alone? Do you wish you had found someone else, built a family with someone who was actually there? Paige was quiet for a moment, watching the boys. Sometimes I was lonely. Sometimes it was brutally hard. But regret? No. These 3 boys are everything to me. Every choice I made for them. And we built something good, the 4 of us. She looked at Bradford directly. I didn't need to be rescued, Bradford. I needed a partner, and I didn't have one, so I became both. I became everything they needed. And yes, it would have been easier with help, but I'm proud of what we built. You should be proud, Bradford said. You built something incredible. We built something incredible, Paige corrected gently. They're incredible, and now you're part of that. So try not to see yourself as someone who needs to fix things or make up for things. Just be present. That's all they need. Dad, Theo called from the other end of the table. Felix says drums are better than triangle, but he's wrong. Can you tell him he's wrong? I think all instruments are equally important, Bradford said diplomatically. That's a cop-out answer, Owen observed, then returned to his ice cream. Paige laughed, a real genuine laugh. Welcome to parenting. Every answer is wrong, and they'll call you out on it. That night, after taking the boys home to Paige's brownstone and saying, good night, Bradford walked the 4 blocks to his own place. He passed families in their lit windows, lives in progress, ordinary moments that he'd spent years thinking were traps. Now they looked like everything he'd ever wanted. When he got home, he found the photo from the concert in his email. He opened it on his computer, full screen. Paige and Bradford standing behind Owen, Felix, and Theo, all 5 of them smiling. looking, to anyone who didn't know better, like a normal family. He made it his desktop background and then his phone wallpaper. A reminder, a promise, a possibility. The next week in therapy, Dr. Keller asked his standard opening question. "How are you feeling about fatherhood this week?" "Less terrified than last week," Bradford said, "which is progress, I think." "Tell me more." "There was a school concert. I moved a board meeting in Singapore to be there. The old me wouldn't have done that. The old me would have sent flowers and an apologetic email. But you went." "I went. I sat next to Paige. I watched my sons play instruments they barely know how to play. I cried like a complete fool. And then we all got ice cream together." Dr. Keller smiled. "That sounds like a perfect evening." "It was ordinary," Bradford said. "Completely, beautifully ordinary. And 2 years ago, I would have run screaming from ordinary. I would have seen it as everything I was trying to avoid. What changed? I realized ordinary is what I was missing. All those extraordinary achievements, the money, the success, the recognition, none of it felt like anything. But watching Theo play triangle, that felt like everything." "Do you still feel afraid?" "Every day," Bradford admitted. "I'm afraid I'll mess up. I'm afraid I'll let them down. I'm afraid I'll revert to the person who runs when things get hard. I'm afraid they'll grow up and realize I wasn't good enough." "That fear," Dr. Keller said carefully, "might never completely go away. The difference is what you do with it." "What do you mean?" 7 years ago, fear made you run. Now fear makes you show up more intentionally. You're afraid of failing them, so you try harder. You're afraid of missing moments, so you rearrange your schedule. You've changed your relationship with fear. It's not your enemy anymore. It's your compass pointing you toward what matters." Bradford sat with that for a moment. "I never thought about it that way. Your father, God rest him, was probably afraid too. Afraid he couldn't provide enough, couldn't do enough, couldn't be enough. But he stayed anyway. You've inherited his fear, but now you're also inheriting his courage." After the session, Bradford walked through Central Park, thinking about his father, about fear, about the choices that define a life. He called Paige. "Hey, is this an okay time?" "Sure, what's up?" He could hear the boys in the background, some kind of argument about a video game. "I was thinking about spring break. It's coming up in a few weeks. I wanted to ask if I could take the boys for part of it. Maybe 4 or 5 days." There was a pause. "Where were you thinking?" "Nothing extravagant. I looked into renting a cabin upstate, near a lake. Fishing, hiking, that kind of thing. Very low key." Another pause, longer this time. "That actually sounds nice. Let me think about it and check with Dr. Chen." "Of course, whatever you're comfortable with." "Bradford." "Yeah? You're really trying, aren't you? This isn't just about easing guilt or checking a box. You actually want to be their father." "More than I've ever wanted anything," he said honestly. "Okay, send me the details about the cabin. I'll probably say yes, but I need to see the specifics first." That night, Bradford researched cabins with the same intensity he used to research investment opportunities. He wanted something safe but adventurous, comfortable but not luxurious, a place where 3 boys could be loud and messy and completely themselves. He found the perfect spot, a 3-bedroom cabin on a small lake surrounded by forest with a dock and canoes and a fire pit. He sent all the information to Paige. Her response came the next morning. "The boys are going to lose their minds with excitement. Yes, you can take them." Bradford read the message 3 times, feeling the weight of the trust she was placing in him. "Thank you," he typed back. "I promise I'll take good care of them." "I know you will," she responded. "You've proven that." 2 weeks later, Bradford loaded 3 excited boys and an absurd amount of luggage into his car for the drive upstate. Theo had insisted on bringing his entire dinosaur collection. Felix had packed his drumsticks just in case. Owen had brought 4 books, which seemed reasonable until Bradford realized they were each about 500 pages long. The drive took 3 hours, filled with car games, singing along badly to music, to bathroom, stops, and one minor argument about whether a T-Rex could beat a shark in a fight. Bradford mediated with the seriousness of a UN negotiator. When they arrived at the cabin, the boys exploded out of the car like they'd been launched from a cannon, racing to explore. Bradford followed at a more measured pace, carrying bags and hoping nothing was currently on fire. The cabin was perfect. Rustic but clean, with big windows overlooking the lake. 3 bedrooms, 1 for each boy, which Bradford hoped would prevent some. of the nighttime chaos that tended to happen when they shared space. That afternoon, they went out on the lake in a canoe. Bradford had never been canoeing before, which became immediately obvious when they started going in slow circles. "Dad, you're doing it wrong," Owen observed from the front of the canoe. "I'm open to instruction," Bradford said, trying to figure out why his paddle wasn't cooperating. "You have to paddle on opposite sides," Felix explained. "Duh." "Don't say duh to your father," Bradford said automatically, then stopped. That was weird to say. What was weird? Theo asked. Nothing. Just being a parent is weird sometimes. Eventually they figured out the rhythm of paddling and made it to the middle of the lake without capsizing, which Bradford considered a major victory. They floated there for a while, the sun warm, the water calm. "This is nice," Owen said quietly. "Just us." "Yeah," Theo agreed. "No schedule, no places to be. Can we come here every year?" Felix asked. Bradford felt his chest tighten with emotion. "If your mom says it's okay, absolutely." That night Bradford made dinner, which consisted of hot dogs and baked beans because his cooking skills remained aggressively limited. The boys declared it the best meal ever, which Bradford suspected had more to do with eating outside by the fire pit than his culinary abilities. After dinner, as the sun set and the fire crackled, Owen asked the question Bradford should have expected, but somehow didn't. "Dad, do you love Mom?" Bradford nearly choked on his water. "That's a complicated question, buddy." Felix and Theo were suddenly very interested in this conversation, abandoning their stick-sword fight to listen. "But do you?" Owen pressed. "I did love her," Bradford said carefully. "Very much. When we got married, I loved her more than I'd ever loved anyone. So why did you leave?" "Because I was scared and stupid, and I made a terrible choice. I thought I was protecting myself, but I was really just running away from the best thing in my life." "Do you still love her now?" Theo asked. Bradford thought about how to answer honestly without confusing them. "I love who she is. I think she's an incredible person and an amazing mother. But the marriage we had ended a long time ago, and we're not going to get back together if that's what you're asking." "Why not?" Felix asked. "In movies, people always get back together. Life isn't like movies," Bradford said gently. "Sometimes when something breaks, you can't put it back together the same way. Your mom and I, we broke what we had. But we're building something new, a friendship, a partnership in taking care of you. 3. That's different, but it's still good. But it would be easier if you lived together," Owen pointed out logically. "Then we wouldn't have to go back and forth." "Maybe easier in some ways," Bradford agreed. "But your mom built a whole life, a good life without me. I can't just walk back into that and expect everything to go back to how it was. That wouldn't be fair to her." "Did you ask her?" Theo wanted to know. "No." "Maybe you should," Felix suggested. "She might say yes, or she might say no, and that would be her right," Bradford said. "The important thing is that both of us love you 3 more than anything. Whether we're together or not doesn't change that." The boys seemed to accept this, moving back to their stick battle. But Bradford sat staring into the fire, thinking about Paige, about the life they could have had, about the choices that had led them here. That night, after getting all 3 boys into their respective beds, Bradford sat on the cabin's porch and called Paige. "Hey, how's it going?" She answered, "I was wondering if you'd survived the first day." "We survived. We canoed, we grilled hot dogs. We had a very interesting conversation about why you and I aren't getting back together." "Oh no." Paige laughed. "Let me guess," Owen asked. "How did you know?" "Because he asked me the same thing last week. Apparently, they've been discussing it amongst themselves." "What did you tell them?" "That you and I are friends and co-parents and that's what we're going to be." "What did you tell them?" "Essentially the same thing, that what we had broke, but we're building something new." There was a pause on the line. "That was a good answer." "They asked if I still love you." Another pause, longer this time. "What did you say to that?" "The truth. That I love who you are but that we're not getting back together." "And what is the truth, Bradford? About how you feel?" Bradford looked out at the lake, moonlight reflecting on the water. "The truth is complicated. I respect you more than anyone I've ever known. I'm grateful to you beyond words. I think you're an incredible person. And yes, sometimes I wonder what might have happened if I'd been brave enough to stay. But I also know that you built a life without me, and you don't need me to complete it. So whatever I feel doesn't really matter. It matters Paige said quietly. Maybe not in the way you wanted to, but it matters. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you ever think about it? About us? About what could have been? Paige was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes, late at night when the boys are asleep and the house is quiet, I think about the Bradford I married, the one who made me laugh and believed in impossible things. And I wonder if that person was ever real or if I made him up. He was real, Bradford said. He just got buried under a lot of fear. Well, maybe you're digging him back out. For the boys, if not for me. Maybe, Bradford agreed. I'm trying. I should let you go. Tell the boys I love them, and I'll see them in a few days. I will. Paige? Yeah? Thank you. For trusting me with them. I know how hard that is. You've earned it, she said simply. Good night, Bradford. The line went dead, and Bradford sat in the darkness, thinking about parallel lives and roads not taken, and whether redemption was ever really complete, or just an endless process of trying to be better. The next 3 days at the cabin were a blur of activity. They hiked through the woods, where Theo found approximately 1 million interesting rocks. They fished off the dock, where Felix caught nothing but managed to tangle his lines spectacularly. They built elaborate sandcastles on the small beach, which Owen architected with serious precision. They talked about everything and nothing. The boys told Bradford about school, about their friends, about the things they worried about and dreamed about. Bradford tried to offer wisdom and mostly just listened, learning that being present was more valuable than having answers. On the last night, they made s'mores by the fire. Theo fell asleep against Bradford's side, sticky with marshmallow residue. Felix and Owen were debating something about Pokemon, a conversation Bradford couldn't follow but enjoyed listening to anyway. Dad, Owen said suddenly, are you happy? Right now? Yeah, buddy. I'm really happy. But in general. Are you a happy person? Bradford thought about it honestly. I'm happier than I've been in a very long time. Maybe happier than I've ever been. Because I have you three. Even though we're loud and messy and argue about dumb stuff. Especially because of that, Bradford said. All of that means life. Real life. For a long time, I had this perfect quiet life that looked good, but felt empty. This is messy and chaotic, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Owen smiled, satisfied with this answer. Good. Because we're probably not going to get less messy. I'm counting on it. When Bradford dropped the boys off at Paige's brownstone 3 days, later they were sunburned and exhausted and filled with stories. They ran inside to tell Paige everything, talking over each other in their excitement. Paige stood in the doorway with Bradford, watching them disappear into the house. Thank you, she said. They clearly had an amazing time. So did I, Bradford said honestly. Best 4 days I've had in years. You're good with them, Bradford. Really good. I wasn't sure at first, but you've proven yourself. I'm just trying to show up. That's all parenting is. Paige smiled. Just showing up day after day, even when you're tired or don't know what you're doing. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think they're okay? With all of this? The back and forth between houses, having a dad who wasn't there and now is? I think they're better than okay, Paige said. They're secure. They know they're loved by both of us. They have 2 homes where they're safe and wanted. That's more than a lot of kids have. I keep waiting to feel like I know what I'm doing. Paige laughed. I've been doing this for 7 years and I still don't know what I'm doing. You just make the best choice you can in the moment and hope it's enough. Bradford nodded, then turned to leave. Bradford? Yeah? You're enough. For them. You're enough. He drove home with those words echoing in his head. You're enough. 6 months later, Bradford sat in the audience of the boys' school auditorium for their end-of-year music concert. They'd been in orchestra for a full year now, and the improvement was noticeable. Still chaotic, still slightly off-key in places, but definitely improved. Paige sat next to him, and this time it felt natural rather than awkward. They'd developed a rhythm over the past year, a co-parenting partnership that worked. They texted regularly about schedules and school events and funny things the boys did. They attended parent-teacher conferences together. They split holidays and worked together on birthday parties. They were friends, real friends. Not romantic, not what they'd once been, but something solid and good. As the orchestra played their final piece, Bradford watched his 3 sons, now 8 years old, concentrated on their instruments. Owen's violin skills had actually gotten quite good. Felix still attacked the drums with more enthusiasm than technique. Theo had graduated from triangle to tambourine, which he considered a major promotion. Bradford pulled out his phone and took a photo, then another, then a short video, documenting the moment, creating the record of a life he was present for. After the concert, in the lobby, a teacher approached them. "Mr. and Mrs. Hartley?" "Oh, we're not," Paige started. "We're co-parents," Bradford finished. "Not married." The teacher looked slightly embarrassed. "My apologies. I just wanted to tell you that Owen, Felix, and Theo are wonderful boys. Polite, engaged, creative. You should be very proud." "We are," Bradford and Paige said simultaneously, then looked at each other and laughed. After the teacher left, Paige shook her head. "We've gotten good at that." "At what?" "The unified parent front. The co-parenting thing. We make a good team." "We do," Bradford agreed. "Who would have thought?" The boys ran up then, interrupting the moment with demands for celebratory ice cream. Some traditions, Bradford had learned, were sacred. That night, Bradford attended his therapy session with Dr. Keller. "How are you feeling about fatherhood?" Dr. Keller asked, as he did every week. "Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," Bradford said. "Like I'm doing what I was always meant to do. That's quite a change from 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I was running from the best thing that ever happened to me. Now I'm running toward it every single day." "Do you still feel afraid?" "Sometimes, but it's different now. I'm not afraid of being trapped or crushed. I'm afraid of missing moments, of not being present, of letting them down. But that fear makes me try harder, not run away." "What do you think your father would say if he could see you now?" Bradford felt his eyes getting wet. "I think he'd say, 'Welcome to the club.' I think he'd say he understood. I think he'd be proud that I figured it out, even if it took me too long. It's never too late to become who you should have been. I'm not sure I believe that. I missed 7 years. I can't get those back." "No," Dr. Keller agreed. "But you have now. You have today and tomorrow and all the days after. Your sons won't remember that you weren't there at the beginning. They'll remember that you showed up and stayed." Bradford nodded, letting that truth settle into him. After the session, walking home through Brooklyn, Bradford thought about the journey. From the airport terminal where he'd seen Paige and the boys to this moment 2 years later. Everything had changed. His job, his priorities, his understanding of what mattered. He'd sold his company's shares and stepped back from active business. He'd moved to Brooklyn permanently. He'd learned to make pancakes and braid hair and mediate sibling disputes. He'd become someone who showed up. His phone buzzed. A text from Owen. "Dad, can you help me with my science project this weekend?" Bradford smiled and typed back. "Absolutely. What's it about?" "Volcanoes. We're going to make one erupt." "Can't wait," Bradford responded. Another text, this time from Theo. "Dad, I'm reading a book about Ankylosaurus. It's so cool. I'll tell you about it when I see you. Looking forward to it, buddy." Then Felix. "Dad, I learned a new drum beat. It's really loud. You're going to love it." "I'm sure I will," Bradford typed back, already hearing the headache. These were his people. This was his life. Messy and loud and chaotic and absolutely perfect. He thought about the Bradford from 7 years ago, the one who'd walked out on Paige because he was afraid of exactly this. That Bradford had no idea what he was giving up, had no concept of what actually mattered. But this Bradford, the one who'd learned through loss and regret, and the patient forgiveness of 3 incredible boys, he knew. He knew that success wasn't measured in bank accounts or acquisitions or magazine covers. It was measured in moments, in science projects and dinosaur facts and drum solos, in showing up when you said you would, in staying when things got hard. It was measured in love, given freely and received gratefully, in the ordinary, extraordinary moments of a life actually lived. Bradford arrived at his brownstone and looked up at the lights. Tomorrow the boys would be here for the weekend. The house would fill with noise and laughter, and probably at least one minor disaster. His carefully organized life would descend into beautiful chaos. He couldn't wait. Inside, he made himself dinner, something simple. While eating, he scrolled through photos on his phone. 2 years of memories. Park days and museums and school events and ordinary afternoons. A record of showing up. A testimony to staying. His phone rang. "Paige. Hey. Everything okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine. I just wanted to tell you something." "Okay." "I forgive you." Bradford froze. "What?" for leaving, for everything. I forgive you. I've been holding on to it for so long, using it as armor. But you've proven yourself. You've shown up for them consistently for 2 years. You've put them first. You've become the father they deserve. So I forgive you." Bradford felt tears streaming down his face. "Paige, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. We can't go back. We can't undo the past, but we can move forward without me holding that weight. It's time. Thank you. Thank you so much. They're lucky to have you as their father, Bradford. I mean that. I'm the lucky one," he said. "I'm the luckiest person in the world." After the call ended, Bradford sat in his quiet kitchen and cried. Not from sadness, but from relief, from gratitude, from the overwhelming weight of being forgiven for the unforgivable. He'd spent 7 years building an empire on the foundation of fear, and he'd spent 2 years building a family on the foundation of love. The second project was infinitely harder and infinitely more valuable, because here's what Bradford had learned, what he wished he could tell his younger self, what he hoped anyone listening would understand. Fear will tell you to run. Fear will tell you that responsibility is a trap, that love is a cage, that vulnerability is weakness. Fear will promise you that if you can just get rich enough, successful enough, powerful enough, you'll finally feel safe. Fear is a liar. Love is the truth. Love is what makes you brave. Love is what gives life meaning. Not romantic love necessarily, though that has its place, but the love of showing up, the love of staying, the love of being present in the messy, ordinary, beautiful moments that make up a life. Bradford had run from that love because he was afraid. And he'd lost 7 years. 7 years of first steps and first words. 7 years of nighttime stories and morning pancakes. 7 years of being needed and wanted and loved. But he'd come back. Terrified and unworthy and desperate, he'd come back. And he'd discovered that it's never too late to choose differently. It's never too late to become who you should have been. The boys didn't need a perfect father. They needed a present father. They needed someone who showed up day after day, even when it was hard. Even when he didn't know what he was doing. Even when he was scared. And Bradford had learned to be that person. Not because he was brave, but because they were worth being brave for. If you're watching this and you're running from something, stop. Turn around. Face the fear. Choose the love. Choose the staying. It won't be easy. It might be the hardest thing you ever do, but it will be worth it. If you're watching this and you've made mistakes you think are too big to fix, try anyway. You can't undo the past, but you can build a different future. One choice at a time. One day at a time. One moment of showing up at a time. If you're watching this and you're afraid that responsibility will crush you the way it crushed your father or your mother or whoever you're trying not to become, know this. The weight of responsibility is heavy, but it's lighter when you choose it. When you carry it with love instead of resentment. When you understand that the weight is the privilege. Bradford Lawson had everything and nothing. And then he learned what actually mattered. It took him 7 years and 3 sons he almost never knew to figure it out. Don't wait 7 years. Don't wait until you see your face reflected in a child you abandoned. Don't wait until you've built an empire that echoes with emptiness. Choose love. Choose staying. Choose the messy, ordinary, extraordinary life of actually being present. Because that's where the real wealth is. Not in bank accounts, but in moments. Not in acquisitions, but in relationships. Not in running, but in staying. Bradford had finally come home, not to a place, but to himself. To the man he was always meant to be. To the father 3 boys needed and deserved. And if he could find his way back from 7 years of running, anyone could. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now and join the Love and Twilights family with Dr. Phillips. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances. Drop a comment and tell me, what choice in your life would you make differently? What are you running from that you should be running toward? Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to choose love over fear. Remember, fear will tell you to run. Love will tell you to stay. Choose love. Every single time, choose love. I'm Dr. Phillips, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, show up for the people who matter. Stay when it's hard. Choose love.